Drake did really well against obviously a lot of things, but really what stood out to you about his performance against App State?
Really, the best thing about Drake May and the App State game, really, and I said this the week before too, but it got better, was the decision making. You know, he was really, he graded out very high with regards to decision making on plays where he had different weapons to go to, different choices, different progressions in the passing game. Pulled the ball when he needed to pull it, gave it when he needed to give it. He was really good on protection. So for a guy that's only been starting for 2 weeks, it tells me he's preparing the right way, and we're definitely practicing the right way. And so, you know, coach says all the time that transitions on game day, and it did. It translates on game day, and it did. So that was a big reason why we were able to maintain some consistency, and we had some continuity. And I think obviously he couldn't do the things that he did without the people around him, but it all starts with his decision making.
Are you at all surprised how good he is so soon with live levels at him after 2 games?
You know, you're always hopeful. I think I'm not surprised because the guys that we have here, you know, we had Sam before, and we've got Drake and Jacoby and Connor and a number of good quarterbacks here, and they're all athletically, they're capable of doing all the things that we need them to do. That's why we recruit them, because they have all the physical tools to make all the throws and run the ball and do all the things that we want them to do. It's whether or not, you know, they can learn the game at the speed of the game at this level, and then can it translate when they get out on the field. So the part of it that I never know is how is it going to translate on game day when the bullets are flying for real. The closest thing that we have are our scrimmages and spring ball and some really competitive areas of practice where we're putting them in some adverse situations to see how they play under pressure and how well they make decisions or don't make decisions. And so right now, the three guys that are, you know, 1, 2, and 3 here are making really good decisions. And I think it helped Ross to have the competition between these two guys because they had to be sharp on all fronts, you know, to compete for the job to begin with. And so we got really good high execution from both of them. And I think Drake is benefiting from that, and so is the team right now.
Are there a couple of throws that he's made the last 2 games that when you see it first, when you go back and watch him play, you're like, wow, that's different level stuff?
Well, you get some of those throws in game time because of the adrenaline. I mean, he ripped a throw on a vertical to Bryson Nesbitt in the end zone to finish the 2-minute drive at the end of the first half. That was an impressive throw. You know, some of his ball placement stuff's been really good. So there's a couple of deep balls that we had that I think if you're not working on and schooled on how to throw the deep ball stuff, you know, you just hang that ball up and you let the receiver go run for it. But we had 2 throws, particularly one on the left and one on the right. The first one was the opener to J.J. Jones, that it needs to be a 2-ball or a high laser shot, and it's got to be inside, and we'd like it to be a little bit higher. And he put both of them where they needed to be, and both of them were completes, and I think a lot of that had to do with ball placement. You know, the receiver gets open, but then we've got to throw him open. And he did that on numerous throws. You know, he missed a few. We caught some low ones. He had a wide open running back in the flat, and we threw it low, and it created us, you know, we stumbled, and I think we got 1 yard. And there was a speed out with Kobe that was underthrown a little bit, and he made a great catch. We threw a comeback on the sideline that was a little low. JJ went down for it, made a great catch. That's just a give and take between those two positions. You know, you'd like them all to be perfect. But the deep balls and some of the more precise throws really have to be good for us to have an opportunity to compete for them, and they were. And so, you know, there wasn't much that there aren't many plays we'd like to have back with him on Saturday. There are a few, but there were fewer than the week before, and that's kind of the direction we'd like to be heading with him.
How pleased have you been overall with that 2-minute drill, even the FAMU game at the end of that first half?
Oh, you get what you emphasize, you know, and I would credit Coach Brown with pushing us, me as a caller, you know, as a play caller on a 2-minute scenario, and our offensive staff, and then the offense in general. We have run that drill every day since we started the regular season, and we did it an awful lot in summer camp. And the drill is good for us, and I think we take naturally to the drill because we're up tempo to begin with. So it's not the tempo that we're getting used to. It's all the logistical things. It's all the strategic things that you do. in that 1 minute or 2 minute scenario that is not the same as, a regular part of the game. So it paid dividends on Saturday, and I'm sure we'll keep doing it, and it'll hopefully keep paying dividends. But it was, it was a huge touchdown at the end of that drive to take the lead going into the half.
How is it seems like you got a lot more options, I guess, in balance, the way this offense is composed this year compared to last year. Do you agree with that, and how is that allowing you to call plays different?
Well, more athletes makes you a better coach. I mean, that's just how it is. So we had seven different players, I think, score touchdowns in the game. I think we had 7 or 8 different people catch the football. I think we ran 4 running backs, if I remember correctly. We used all 3 of our tight ends. Drake sprayed the ball around, and it just forces you, from a personnel standpoint, to have to defend everybody, which makes it more difficult. And then schematically, we're trying to stretch the field pre-snap horizontally from sideline to sideline, and we're going to stretch it vertically post-snap, regardless of what we're running. So if we can make them defend all of the players and we can make them defend all of the field, it gives us the best opportunity to create some space and hopefully a big play.
Phil, in light of that, what was your takeaway not having Josh and the way the other receivers sort of in line with that played without the guy that everyone looks to?
Well, I mean, anytime you play without Josh Downs, it's not a good thing, right? Because he's such a playmaker. And then even when the ball is not being targeted or focused on towards Josh, he's usually attracting some sort of second defender, right? Whether it's truly not double coverage, whatever. But there's a second guy that knows that he's in the area and they're going to help with some zone support or something. And so what that does is it creates one-on-ones everywhere else. And now probably what we have going on now is we have some players that are proving that they can win in some one-on-one scenarios. And that bodes well for us. That's what you need. I think that's we lacked that at one wide receiver position last year. We're struggling to find another guy that they didn't feel like they could eliminate with just one defender. And that's where we want to go. I think it's hard to cover J.J. Jones in a one-on-one scenario. It's definitely hard to cover Gavo and a Gavin Blackwell in a one-on-one scenario. And then Kobe showed you what he can do from that position that Josh Downs kind of bases out of. So now we know we have more depth. We have more firepower at the receiver position. We already know about the depth in the backfield, and we're playing 3 tight ends. So I think what we need to do right now is focus in on preparing for each opponent and make sure we continue to play downhill up front like we did on Saturday and be physical and protect Drake the way we did Saturday. And it's going to come down to execution on Saturday. It's not going to be that we don't have the guys. We do have the players. And so we've got to have a good plan, and we've got to go execute it. And I thought the other thing, maybe the one disappointment in Saturday was the penalties. We had some pre-snap penalties that we can control. 4 of them were up on the offensive line. And so those are things that you got to emphasize, you got to eliminate, especially when you're playing against a good team like we were last week.
Seems like George Pedway was pretty special when he gets the ball, especially in space. Thoughts on his performance, and is there an idea way to get the ball more?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking about that today. I mean, George is very explosive. One of the issues, it's a good problem to have, but one of the problems that you have when you do have more players, when you do have more depth, is you've got to be creative and you've got to be, I think, intentional probably is the word with regards to getting some of these guys to football. You can only have a target list for so many guys, right? So last year it was Josh Downs and Sam had a good week of practice. It was Antoine Green probably. This year it could be George, it could be Omarion, it could be DJ, it could be Caleb, it could be any one of these receivers now, and any one of the 3 tight ends. Obviously we use Bryson Nesbitt in a different way, but so you kind of look at from a strategic standpoint, an X's and O's standpoint, what do they give up? How do we get our best players into those plays, into those areas, so that they get the touches that they need? Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure the best ones, the most explosive ones, and George is certainly one of those guys, have enough touches to help us contribute to a win every Saturday.
You scored 63 points. This might be nitpicking, but did you go back and kind of reevaluate when you got the turnover, but that drive ended with the field goal as opposed to being able to score?
So you're talking about Drake's turnover?
Yes.
You
No,
know,
no, no.
you're talking about when we got the turnover?
Yeah, and that drive ended with you guys kicking the field goal.
Yeah, you'd like to finish that with 7. There's no question. I think we had 6 points off of turnovers. I believe, and we wound up kicking 2 longer field goals instead of finishing those 2 drives. We had 12 total drives. We scored on 9 of them. 7 of them were touchdowns, 2 of them were field goals. You always want those field goal drives to be. What I was happy about, those field goals didn't come in the red zone. So we were 4 for 4 in the red zone where we wanted to be. And yeah, you do. You look at those plays on the field goal drives to see where we could have executed better. Could I have called something better? I called a run play down in an area on their side of the field that we know they heated up a little bit. And we had an answer for the pressure. But I probably could have made Drake's job a little bit easier there had I called something different, a protected run or, a quick hit or something in that area. So you look at the play calling, you look at our execution, you look at mistakes that are made on the negative plays. We evaluate sacks and TFLs every week just to make sure that we understand why they're happening. We were listed for 3 sacks this week, but one of them was on Drake May. We pulled on an RPO that was never there, and that's going to be a sack. You can't pull an RPO unless it's open. And so we did that one time, and that was really one of the sacks. The O-line had 1 sack this week, and then a tight end gave up a sack. So, the 3 get credited to the O-line, but really when you break it down and you look at it, Drake is responsible for 1, a tight end was, and then the O-line gave up 1 this week. So those are the parts of the game that you don't see until you you sit down in the office and you pull the film up and you evaluate what really happened.
And what would you attribute the success in the red zone so far to?
But truthfully, I honestly think that we're playing physical up front. You can do some things play calling wise in the open field to help protect your O-line. I think it's hard to do that on short yardage. It's hard to protect them on the goal line, and it's hard to protect them in the red zone. And at the end of the day, in short yardage football and goal line football and in red zone football, regardless of the X's and O's and whether we run or throw, the ability to be able to run down there is huge. And then there's a physicality piece to pass protecting too. It's not just run game. So we're getting some good production there right now at that position, and it's helping us in some of the situational areas without question.
Phil, when we're talking about the different routes to feed on offense,
Sure.
getting guys the ball and stuff, is one of the fun things or positive things is that they each, in terms of running back, bring so many different skills to the table. That way, speed with Marion and Caleb's power. Is that like just kind of a neat thing for you to have as a play caller?
Well, it's like having toys. I mean, you want to use them the right way, but there's another aspect to it too. It's the depth that gives you some weaponry in terms of you've got one running back out there and he's hitting on all cylinders and he's gaining yardage and he's breaking tackles and he's securing the ball, and you have another one out there who might have rushed for 150 yards the week before, and he's just not off to as good a start. So you can roll with the hot guy when you have some depth, and then it also breeds competition, so that when running back number 2 or 3 or 4, and I don't mean on the depth chart, but just into the game and from an order standpoint, when they get out there, they want to perform because they know that in order to stay out there, they've got to produce. And I say this in just about every offensive team meeting that we have. At the end of the day, it really comes down to character and production, and there's really nothing else that's important. We got to be good people on and off the field, and we got to handle ourselves the right way. And the character piece, it lends to their preparation and how they treat their teammates and how they lead and do all of those things on that end of being a ball player. And then on the other end, it's production. There are kids that have played here that didn't play a lot in the past that I love and that could babysit my kids that I just will have relationships with for years, but their production was low, and so you have to make a decision with regards to what's best for your team, and that is putting out the most productive people. And then I think Coach Brown would agree with this entirely, is you have a guy that's extremely productive, but is not handling himself in a high character way. He's not going to play either, right? So you got to handle yourself from a teammate standpoint the right way, and that's what's so great about this program is it's a high character locker room. So we've got a lot of continuity, even between the O and the D in our locker room. And then so it really becomes only about production because we've got a high character team. So then you go out there and you practice hard and you play, and the guys that are producing are the guys that play more. It's a lot simpler than people make it out to be sometimes.
Can you maybe just give us some idea of what goes into what you all are using to determine a starter at running back? Obviously, you went DJ Deodorant and then Omarion against that. Obviously, Omarion had a great game against FAMU, and then didn't have as big of a game in Boone. But like, just what are your the pieces you're using to determine a starter just at that position?
Well, it is a little bit of a dance when you have 4 of them. And, you know, Coach Porter and I talk about it weekly, and we were discussing it this morning before I came down. You have guys with different strengths, so you try to play to their strengths. You have guys that are more reliable mentally than some others because they're veterans and the others are younger guys, so you want to play them at the right time. And I think all 4 of our guys made plays on Saturday, and Coach Porter does a good job of rolling through them. If I need one for a specific play and I know, I'll call him. If I don't need a specific one, then he's handling the rotation with those guys so that we can, one, keep them fresh. He's going with the hot guy. You know, Caleb had a fumble that went out of bounds last week, but, you know, that's concerning, right? So his reps kind of diminished a little bit, and we went with the guys that were securing it. And that's certainly not an attack on Caleb. He had a great game on Saturday. You know, he busted one wide open on a power play that took us down to inside the 5-yard line. So he did a great job Saturday. Those are the variables that kind of dictate. It's the production. It's what is the need and what is their strength, you know, and then who has the hot hand. And I don't know if that makeup or that approach will change here. That's kind of how we handle it at every position. Yeah.
Georgia State played a Power 5 team with a talented quarterback down there. What did you see on the field from their defense?
Defensively, there's some players there that we are concerned with because of how productive they are. 34 is an outstanding safety, you know, and to look at him, he's not 6'4" and 220 pounds or anything, but so size is not his deal, but he will hit you like he's that size. And he's physical and he can cover ground, and he's really athletic, and he does a good job in the open field. Now, 98's a very, very good defensive lineman. I believe it's 54 is a really good defensive lineman in the nose. Number 9 is a player. He's playing that bandit position, which is ironically the same number in the same position that we saw at App State last week. There are some similarities between the App State defense and the Georgia State defense. I think the DC at Georgia State does a few different things out of the same base defense than App does, but there is a lot of overlap this week, which can be a benefit because we're not seeing something that's completely new and drastically different from what we've had in the past. But sometimes I think maybe, hey, we had a lot of success with this last week and it's just going to go that well this week. It's going to be different because the players are different and the strengths are different. So schematically, a lot of overlap from a personnel standpoint. I think very, very different than App State, and those guys particularly that I mentioned are the ones that stand out right now and from a day and a half of watching film.
All right, gang.
Okay, y'all have a good one.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, thanks, Phil.